Welcome to ICL's The Bottom Line, Fast Fertilizer Facts, where we break down fertilizer practices, products, and cutting-edge agronomy techniques in 10 minutes or less. In each episode, we will deep dive into one topic, one product, or one practice, and end up where it matters most, the bottom line. On this episode, we're digging into natural mineral polyhalite, known in the market as polysulphate. What it is, how it works, and can it really replace gypsum?
We are joined today by two crop nutrition experts from ICL Growing Solutions, Dan Tollefson, Polysulphate Product Lead in the U.S. Hi, Dan.
Good morning.
And Scott Garnett, Agronomy Lead for Fertilizers and Spec Ag in the UK and Ireland. Hi, Scott.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Of course. With deep agronomic knowledge and years of experience, Dan and Scott bring valuable insights into polysulphate and its role in modern nutrient management. Thank you both so much for coming today. Scott, you work in the UK close to our Bowlby mine, so let's start at the source. What is polyhalite, or as we call it, polysulphate?
So I work out of Bowlby mine, as you said. So polyhalite is a rock that we found that's 250 million years old. It contains potassium, magnesium, calcium, and sulfur, a small amount of boron, and 2 water molecules. When we mine the product in the UK, we crush it down to our granule size, the 2 to 4 mil, and as we bring it above ground, we actually call that product polysulphate.
One thing to add on that too is there's no chemical processing when we produce polysulphate. It is simply the mineral. It's OMRI certified and has a very low carbon footprint due to the way on the product.
Yeah, we just dropped the carbon footprint by 91% in the UK by switching all our energy to solar and wind power.
Wow, that's incredible. So you say polysulphate is naturally gradual release. How does it work exactly?
Because you've got rock chippings, they basically take a longer time to dissolve. But on all the work that we've done, we had a PhD student at Nottingham University, and we looked at the release characteristics of the product. And we found that the poly releases its nutrients over about 50, 60 days, which is in line with how nitrogen is actually absorbed by the plants. So if you think about nitrogen being uptaken, the majority of that nitrogen taken up the first 50, 60 days, and sulfur is critical to improve that NUE.
So polysulphate has a lower K level than some traditional inputs. Can it replace gypsum or potassium sulfate?
Yes, Britt, that is a very good question, and we get that question a lot. It's what do I replace polysulphate? And I like the benefits polysulphate brings, but I've got limited space. What products can I kick out? And I guess my question back to them would be, well, what is the weak point in your current system today? It all depends. Polysulphate is very flexible in its application, so it can enhance other fertilizers or replace other ones. So it really depends on what you're looking for polysulphate and what type of crops that you're going to put it on.
I would totally agree with that. In the UK and in Europe, we've found that farmers now, instead of having ammonium sulfate and ammonium nitrate or CAN on farm, they will just have a single source nitrogen, and they will use their polysulfate to apply their sulfur and a small amount of potassium, and then a single source nitrogen on the crop. As for replacing potash, it reduces the use of potash. We find in our markets, so we may be taking out 14 to 28 kilos of nitrogen of potassium. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is in pounds. I do apologise. And the work that we've done on the calcium content in it, we found that we can do a lot better job than gypsum, especially with calcium absorption through the crop.
That's incredible. How and when is polysulphate being used effectively in the field?
Yeah, we use polysulphate in a variety of different application processes. So it can be broadcast, banded, or we've got a product called Polysulphate Premium that can be used in air seeders. So we've seen it in all types of applications. both in the spring, and then we like to say it's fall applied, spring approved. So also in the fall, polysulphate can be applied.
So when we first started working with the product in Europe, we thought the application had to be very early, like January, February, for the product to release. And we found, much like Dan, we do an autumn application to mop up residual and mineralized nitrogen. But we've also found that we can use it quite late in the spring and the summer. So we put it direct application for pulses, for potatoes and vegetables, the shorter term crops, as well as the long-term, protein crops like wheat or if we're looking at dry matter on maize or things like this. We find it's a product that fits in all crops varieties.
I know our viewers are probably wondering, what about ROI? Does polysulphate make sense financially for growers?
Yes, Britt, that's a very good question, and I think that's the one that ultimately needs to be answered. Time is money, so we do have a flexible application window, and we've got over 1,000 field trials where we're showing the benefits of polysulphate. What we've seen from a grower level too is really high customer retention rate. What we've seen is for the first year, farmer will dedicate a field to polysulphate, but then they'll come back the following year and dedicate 2, 3, or 4 fields to polysulphate. And they wouldn't do that if it didn't work. And so from a grower perspective, we have seen some significant ROI, because especially in today's environment, that matters. From a retailer, it provides a lot of benefits just due to the flexibility. So if you do dedicate a bin, polysulphate has 4 nutrients in it, and it's not limited to just commodity crops like corn or soybeans. You can also use it, as we had mentioned, in specialty crops, fruits and vegetables, potatoes, almonds. And from a pricing perspective, we do market competitive pricing, but we're also priced to grow. So retailers have really appreciated the price point we have for polysulphate in the marketplace today.
And finally, what's next for polysulphate in the US market specifically?
Yeah, a lot. Just a couple things. We are growing really fast. And so my job is to find places to store product and make it easier for customers to get it. And so we're expanding our footprint logistically. But from a product standpoint, we also have a product called PK Plus, which is you take the standard polysulphate, which is your fines, your undersize, and you combine it with phosphoric rock, sulfuric acid, phos acid, MOP, SOP. So we kind of can develop a 5-nutrient granule that the analysis can be customized. And so that is, the next step that we see into the North American market with polysulphate. So it'll be a couple new products in the pipeline, but you should see more chatter in the field and just a lot more availability and new products.
Thanks so much, Scott and Dan, for breaking that down. For more on ICL's polysulphate, FertilizerPlus lines, and upcoming innovations, visit icl-growing-solutions.us. Until next time, this has been The Bottom Line Fast Fertilizer Facts.